the Michael K. Show. We thank you for joining us on this Thursday. It's April 11th. It's 2024. Hope you're having a great day. Weird. It's kind of weird to process because, OJ Simpson passed away after a battle with prostate cancer. And, even our own company and around news outlets throughout the world, they're covering it like a head of state passed away. And it's weird because other than being a great football player, he certainly didn't seem like he was a great guy. And I know that we cover people that are not great guys, but ESPN is it's like wall-to-wall coverage on. Thank goodness for the Masters. I thought I'd never say that.
Yeah.
Or otherwise it would be flooding the airwaves. I just don't think the guy deserves that kind of.
Well, that's how I felt about it, and it's not just us, Michael. It's everywhere. It's getting covered as if a head of state passed away, and you could say, well. And the pushback that I've gotten, in our meetings and such as, well, come on, he was a Hall of Fame running back. God forbid if Eric Dickerson passed away, I don't think we'd be covering it like this. Now, you look at his acting career. There have been actors that have recently passed that have not gotten this kind of coverage.
But way bigger actors.
Now, you combine the two, now you're talking about something, but let's be honest. The third piece is what happened 30 years ago.
No, that's the first piece.
But what I'm saying is that we can talk all about his football career. We can talk about his acting career. But what happened 30 years ago was so polarizing. And we were talking to some students from Fordham today that weren't alive during that. Our producer wasn't alive in 94. It's hard to even put into words how big a deal that was. So I get that it's a big deal that happened. But it did kind of rub me the wrong way, quite frankly, that he is getting the attention that he's getting. Because even though he was not convicted for the murders, he was found guilty in the civil suit. And we also know what happened after in Las Vegas. Not a good person. So it kind of bothers me that he's getting the coverage that he's getting, but I kind of have to live with it and understand it.
It's 100% because of 1994. That is Eric OJ Simpson, the football player, would have been a top headline on the side of ESPN.com.
Sure.
The football player.
Yeah.
It would have said that top headline on the side. It would have said Tiger teeing off 354 as your front page, and the side would say OJ Hall of Famer OJ Simpson passed away at 70. What was he?
76.
76. The even football career, even acting career, Don, wouldn't have changed that. He would have been...
Right, Lou Gossett Jr. didn't get the coverage, and he just recently passed away and was a tremendous actor.
Correct. And by the way, the first black Oscar award, male Oscar, I think, was to Lou Gossett Jr. So OJ, the reason OJ is elevated from the sports page to everything else is 100% because he was involved in one of the biggest, most culturally impactful sort of moments in modern America. I mean, I don't think we can't avoid that part. Well, yeah, it's all bad, but we can't avoid it.
And the reason that the coverage was so big in 94 was because of the acting and because of the football player. That's why that was so epic. And then it all kind of comes together. But
and just the fact that it was a chase. I mean, it was a perfect confluence of events that led to that being the biggest story in the world. You isolate any one thing and you're like, why was this what everyone was talking about? But when we got to that Friday night in June, the Rangers are playing in the finals and the Knicks are playing in the playoffs and the World Cup is happening and Jack Nicklaus is playing in his last event and OJ Simpson is on the run. It was the perfect confluence, and it became the biggest thing. And then you add, of course, America's favorite thing. You sprinkle on a big dose of racial division, and it's got everything to make it a gigantic story. And that's the reason it's getting this. His athletic career deserves legitimate conversation, but that is not why this is a conversation.
Well, the sad part about the way his life unfolded, he is one of the most dynamic, NFL football players of all time. Just is. And we're not even talking about that. We're not even talking about the great player with the Buffalo Bills and all the yards he carried and, the juice, whatever. He completely destroyed his life. And obviously, according to a civil trial, he ended the life of two other people. But a jury of his peers said that he didn't. And if you really, if you really want to get deep here, if you want to look at our country in a state of disrepair, you can go back to that trial And it's been a drip since then.
Yeah.
And really, everything started to fall apart. That was totally something that was done along racial lines. And, everybody that's involved in that trial pretty much is dead.
That is kind of crazy.
Yeah,
right?
Dershowitz, I think,
right?
is still alive at 85. And obviously on the Marcia Clark is still alive. But
is Ito still alive? The judge?
I believe so. I could look. I didn't look that up. I know that
Kardashian's dead.
Bailey,
Effley
Bailey's dead.
Johnny Cochran's dead.
Yeah,
he's alive. He's alive.
Ito?
Yeah.
Ito was born in 1950. He's 73.
And he led an absolute circus. He was a lot of the problem with that trial too. He's going on television as an active judge in an active trial.
It was a bizarre moment in time. The thing that upset me is that, obviously the last since I left the show early yesterday, I've been consumed with the passing of Mr. C. We did a show today that was unlike any show I've ever done before. The most emotional radio show I've probably ever done. And all day I'm just kind of reading people's tributes. And then I'm sorry, with all due respect, I was just like, now I'm seeing people post about OJ. I was just like, I'm not saying the guy doesn't deserve mourning. He has loved ones. He has family. But the level of space it's taking up it just got me. I was sitting there literally reading one tribute after another about this wonderful man who did so many things in this city and in our industry. And then to just see people say, "Oh, rest in peace, OJ." I'm not saying he doesn't deserve peace, but I can't.
Well, there are those people.
But if he did kill 2 people, I don't think he deserves peace.
Well, that becomes a different conversation.
Right.
That's a religious conversation. But I just don't have the ink or time to post.
There are people, I don't know if any of them will call today, that think he's innocent. And then there are people that didn't care because they felt like, and this was only, a couple of years removed from Rodney King, finally, there was a black man that was able to get off and not get railroaded.
Well, by the way, I appreciated that sentiment so much more than innocent. I was like, tell me you just think it's justice served. Please don't tell me you think he won this case.
Well, a lot of people say he did.
But there are people there are a lot of people that felt that way. But here's the thing: is that even if you wanted to take the tact of, we got our comeuppance, it wasn't about black or white. It was about green. He was rich. He got off because we just rattled off the names of the lawyers. Good luck anybody being able to afford that kind of dream team. And then the way the L.A. prosecutors completely dropped the ball because they had no idea what they were doing. That's what ended up happening.
Well, and as we saw in the years that follow, it didn't signify any sort of change with the justice system.
No.
It signified nothing. It was just a rich guy who got off. That was it.
And this guy, before that incident, he had one of the great lives ever. I mean, he was a broadcaster. He wasn't a good broadcaster, but he was a broadcaster. He was charming, and he had commercials. I mean, he was living the life.
Is there a comp? I thought of one. I'm wondering if you thought of to explain
becoming a broadcaster.
Well, no, explaining the level of celebrity that OJ was in 1994 to what it would be if I was trying to describe it to somebody that wasn't alive, like Anthony here in 2024. There was one person that I thought of, not quite that level, but I think close.
Who?
Would be Michael Strahan, where he was a Hall of Fame football player. He's now created a whole other life for himself on television, where there are probably people, Michael, that know Michael Strahan who had no idea what football team he played for or that he played football. So I don't know if I'd have him at OJ's level, because OJ was just epic. With the Naked Gun movies and the Hess commercial, the Hertz commercials, but that would be the comp. And that's why there was so much attention at the time. People know that is always going to be where were you when, not just the innocent verdict or the not guilty verdict, but the Bronco, and just when you heard that his wife and her friend were killed, and him being questioned, and then eventually they were trying to hunt him down. That is carved into, I think, anybody of a certain age's memory, to the level of JFK or the moon landing. I don't think I'm exaggerating here. The attention that got was epic.
I mean, if you were at Madison Square Garden for that Game 5 of the NBA Finals, people were going to the concession stand to watch the chase. The bowl of Madison Square Garden was not full because people were watching this chase. Here's a story I never told on the air before. Kevin Smolin, who produced the Yankee games on Yes for the first 10 years, was a producer at NBC. And he was very close with OJ. And he was OJ's producer whenever OJ did any kind of piece for the NFL, whatever. And so Kevin is in the truck. He was one of the production crew for the NBA Finals. He was in the truck at Madison Square Garden, and OJ Simpson in the Bronco called up NBC and said, "I want to talk to Kevin Smolian."
Mm-hmm.
And some flunky answered the phone. "Oh, I'm sorry, he's working." Hung up. Again, call back. "I want to talk to Kevin Smolian." His name is Kevin Smolin, but OJ used to call him Smolian. And he goes, "I need to talk to Kevin Smolian. It's an emergency." "I'm sorry, he's doing the game." Hung up. And like 2 weeks later, somebody came up to Kevin. "Did you ever get a chance to talk to OJ? He was calling you." What? They could have had this interview with OJ on the air if they had patched it through to the truck and let him talk to Kevin.
Oh my God,
that's incredible.
Isn't that unbelievable?
It's wow. And were you at the Garden?
I was at the Yankee game. I think. Yeah.
I was working at Sports Phone, watching the Rockets and the Knicks, and then just seeing the screen shrink, and all of a sudden the Knicks game's on a little box in the bottom right-hand corner of the television, and people were mentioning on Twitter, it wasn't really a chase, it was more like an escort, but he was still watching the Bronco, which I'm still convinced is that everybody was just hoping that there'd be a shootout or something would happen, because there was no high-speed chase. It wasn't anything really interesting to see other than what was going to happen. Was he going to commit suicide? What was he going to do?
Well, yeah, you were waiting for the end.
You're waiting for where it felt like it was going to be the end, and the rest of the country didn't get the game. They were off it. They were done.
Think about the justice system in this country. The murders occur. He goes to Chicago, then comes back. Then every evidence is pointing to him. He gets in a Bronco with Al Cowlings, and they're driving to Mexico. He's trying to leave the country, and he's found not guilty. What they try to spin that at? He was distraught?
Yeah.
So when you're distraught, you always jump in a Bronco and just drive in the highway.
Yeah, wouldn't you? I mean, to this day, and the one thing I don't want to have on the show is arguments about whether guilty or not. Everyone's going to have their opinion. Wouldn't that whole thing of the joke that people used to make, OJ's looking for the real killer?
Right.
Like, wouldn't you just come out and be so distraught immediately and just going, "Oh my God, I will do anything I can to make sure that the person who killed my wife will pay"?
I wonder if Kato Kalin steps up now and said, "By the way, he did do it."
Was that the word that Kato knew?
Well, Kato was on the property.
But he still may have not seen.
Right. Those two people were practically decapitated. It was so gruesome and vicious. They were practically decapitated.
Because even in a world where someone else was killing them for another reason, why would it be so gruesome?
Right.
And the part that always killed me, not to take away the innocence and tragedy for Nicole Brown Simpson, but was Ron Goldman. Was this guy who just she knew, maybe she was talking to him, but he doesn't know what he's getting involved in.
No.
He brought back her glasses, right?
Yeah, from the restaurant. Awful.
With OJ, yeah, Peter, you were mentioning it before. I mean, you see people on Twitter, there's one NFL player saying, "Rip OJ, rip OJ." It was, is it just me, or do I don't understand these people that have remorse, and, his kids, I think he's still in contact. He was still in contact with them, but they didn't, they weren't really close to him and whatnot. But, he murdered two people. I wasn't alive to see all the stories and everything. But yeah, I'm with you. It doesn't, I didn't feel any remorse or any sadness to see this guy go, and it's sad the way he went and everything, but it's still. And wouldn't it be poetic if 30 years ago the Knicks and the Rangers were both in the NBA Finals, and they have a chance to go to the finals 30 years later on the year he passed away, and imagine they're both in the finals again, and to see that translation, that would be really cool.
Well, I certainly will say, I don't have any commentary whatsoever for his family. Obviously, his children. I mean, I think children and loved ones have their own decisions and relationships to make with their flawed parents, siblings, etc. Yeah. I pass no judgment on that whatsoever. I'm sure there are plenty of people who will mourn OJ Simpson. But I'm just saying, for me personally, as I'm mourning someone else who is such a wonderful person, it's hard for me to spend a lot of bandwidth when so much of what I know about OJ was not great. That doesn't mean I think that he deserved anything bad in his way. I'm not God. I will not pass judgment on the man as he's dying. I'm just saying I personally don't have the bandwidth for it.
Do you believe, and we don't know this question, so supposedly his family was around him, was there a deathbed confession? Or did he take it to his grave?
Didn't he already write the book?
He wrote a book.
If I had done it.
Right. But still, the if.
No.
Did he finally say, you know what, I did this?
No chance. No chance.
I would say this: if he didn't do it, it's probably because the people that were around him all knew, and he probably had told them at different times.
Right.
Or his children around him, and if he admitted that he did it, then he took their mother away. So,
not what you want.
Nope. Hey, I told you that my home needed a refresh, so I chose the painting professionals at Certified Paint. And also, I'd like to get Robert Shapiro on, the one of the last remaining people alive that was part of the OJ defense.
Wow, that's right.
Strong.
Between Shapiro and Dershowitz.
I don't think he could get Dershowitz. That's why I didn't ask.
Really?
Yeah.
You think he gets Shapiro's only 81?
Only 81.
I'm sure he's very spry.
Yeah. He was kind of pushed out though by Cochran because he was the lead attorney.
He was.
Yeah. What a mess. OJ Simpson passed away, prostate cancer. It's such a complicated story. A great football player at USC, great football player with the Bills, but his whole legacy is what happened on that night in 1994. Now, a jury of his peers found him not guilty. In a civil trial, he was found guilty. And if you even forget about that, then the stuff he did with the memorabilia where he actually did go to jail.
Yes, he did.
The second act of his career was movie star and broadcaster. The third act of his career completely ruined the other two acts.
It's just so sad for us, Michael, and even Peter to a certain extent, that there are so many people that are important in our lives and our listeners that weren't old enough to remember any of this happening. It's crazy. It's kind of like JFK for us. I wasn't alive, and you were 1 or 2, right? So it's a big moment in this country's history, and there's a lot of people that don't remember it. And so you kind of have to, it's left to us to describe what was going on there. And he was just, there wasn't anybody who didn't know OJ Simpson. And I remember there being people that knew OJ Simpson that thought he was a basketball player. Like the football player wasn't even the reason why they knew him. They knew him from the Hertz commercials. They knew him from the Naked Gun movies. They knew him from just being a charismatic figure. And the comp that I come up with is like a Michael Strahan, who's like a very popular guy that has made himself a name in all different walks of life beyond his football career. That's what O.J. Simpson was able to do. And then he's accused of murdering his wife and his wife's friend or lover, however you want to describe it, in as brutal a fashion as possible. It's right out of a movie.
Insane.
And then he's in the Bronco. Nobody knows what's going to happen. Is he running to Mexico? Is he going to kill himself? It's on national television where they actually interrupt the NBA Finals.
But you're explaining exactly why it's getting the billing it's getting today. Because when
it was a seminal moment in this country.
And if you were, and Don just explained it really well. Like if you were to explain to an alien why it's so crazy, you get why it became what it became.
I understand. But let's be honest. It is a thing because he was accused of murdering 2 people. If he had been just a football player, if he had never done that, would he be getting the attention it's getting?
No.
Now, if you want to give attention to the anniversary of the moment, but I don't know, it's a little disturbing to me. I see his face and I see, his birth and his death, and I'm sorry, it's really difficult for me to celebrate this man.
Now, I usually don't read tweets from Geraldo Rivera, but he obviously covered the trial. This is what he wrote on X. I usually don't speak ill of the dead, but O.J. Simpson doesn't deserve that mercy. He was an enraged, obsessively jealous double murderer who hid his rage behind a mask of affability. He exploited our nation's racial divide to avoid being found guilty of the brutal slasher killings he perpetrated on Nicole Brown Simpson, his children's mother, and her friend Ronald Goldman. O.J. nearly decapitated them, then left town, only to skulk back via the infamous white Bronco 405 freeway car chase, ending in a downtown L.A. courtroom where a nearly all-black jury, before a nearly all-black jury. When the killer's glove didn't fit, He was acquitted after the most sensational televised criminal trial in history. The diametrically opposed reaction in real time of the elated black community and the outraged white community to the verdict spoke more potently about America's racial divide than any thoughtful essay ever could.
Who wrote that?
Geraldo Rivera.
That's pretty well said. There always was a piece of incredible. There was so much irony in the OJ verdict, and as I got older, I understood more from friends and listening to people and their experience. I listened to people who explained to me why, even though they didn't really have any love for OJ, they took some satisfaction in seeing the shoe on the other foot, right? And I understood that as I got older. I came to have a bit of an understanding of why that was. The irony in all of that, though, is that OJ was basically publicly sort of embraced in that moment by a large portion of the black community. A community that he had widely abandoned in his success.
That's what made it so weird.
He ran out, married the whitest woman on planet Earth. He was not Jim Brown, okay? This was not a hero of the community at all. And then, ironically, the black community, which is incredibly a forgiving community, particularly because people have a shared experience, and when they see someone get attacked, they go, well, we know that experience. They kind of took OJ back and gave him grace. And so it's layered with irony that we were so split as a nation, and I don't think any of it had to do with any particular fondness for OJ Orenthal James Simpson, the person. It was like this confluence of events: the Rodney King verdict, the sadness and anger around police brutality, the injustice and racism of the justice system towards black Americans, and then white people having this feeling of like, hey, I'm watching a trial, this feels unfair, and sort of getting a taste of that. I don't get it. It all just came together into this nasty stew, but very little was about the character of OJ, who I think most people, no matter how you felt at the time, I don't think anyone had a true fondness at that moment for OJ the man.
I think OJ the personality was people were very fond of him
prior to 94.
Oh yeah.
But I think as the trial unfolded and people started talking, I think people you almost would have to be in complete denial to have actually believed this is an innocent man who's just wrong place, wrong time. I mean, we could look at other trials that have happened in U.S. history and go, I have a lot of questions about that. The OJ one, as we pointed out earlier, this was a guy who, from the very beginning when he was on the run, it made no sense. If you had nothing to do with the death of your ex-wife, were they currently separated or divorced?
Separated.
So this is your estranged wife still. And she was nearly decapitated in brutal fashion. The idea that your gut reaction would be to go on the run rather than be immediately, and especially when you're someone who's that rich. If you were completely powerless, I could see a world in which you get scared. You go, oh my God, everybody knows that I was upset about our divorce and I'm this powerless person. They're going to think it's me. But you're OJ Simpson. You're a national television star. You can afford every lawyer on planet Earth. Why would you go running? Why wouldn't you immediately go, I'm with the police. We're going to do everything we can to find this person.
But there are still people out there that contend that he didn't do it. And, we have to report that he didn't do it because he was found not guilty by a jury of his peers. Now, he was found guilty in a civil trial, but there are a lot of people out there that have convinced themselves that he did it or he didn't do it. So I look back on that trial and I followed it so closely at the time. And I think that the people that were trying to prosecute him were inept. Marsha Clark was inept. The fact
Christopher Darden?
The fact that they let Johnny Cochran pull the bloody gloves. Of course, the gloves shrunk. They were drenched in blood.
And I think
of course, he couldn't fit his hand in there.
But I also think he had like a protective plastic over his hands too,
because he couldn't touch the evidence.
Right. So,
I mean, and the Bruno Malley shoes, and come on,
it was all a disaster. Did you watch the show when it was on a couple years ago?
Yeah.
I mean, they paint the picture of it pretty well. It was a completely mismanaged trial, and you mentioned it earlier, the superpower attorneys that he had on his side.
Let me ask you this, because I don't want to say he's being honored, but the way it's kind of being covered is the death of a statesman.
Well, I wouldn't go that far.
I felt like it this morning.
What did you hear though? Is it
No, but
because death of a statesman implies that it's really sad.
But I'm just you're putting up his picture with the year he was born and the year he died. You're showing highlights of him as a football player. You're showing footage from the movies he was in and the Hertz commercials.
But you're also seeing the chase.
But that's all part of it. But would it have gone this over the top if he had been found guilty?
I think so. You think it'd be any different?
I think if
OJ died in jail today, I think it would be a huge story still.
Yeah, but I think there would have been riots in the streets.
What do you mean? If he was
found guilty?
Oh, back then?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, probably.
Right. So then there would have been that kind of. I mean,
either way, it would have led to the same thing today, though.
Right.
No matter how you cut it, it would. You can't deny that OJ was a seminal figure. Now, as I said earlier, and I'll say it again. If OJ Simpson, just the football player and the actor, passed away, it would have been the top headline on the side of ESPN. One little thing, Hall of Famer Simpson dead at 76. And it would have been a story about it. And maybe in the NFL next season, we would have seen some stuff about it. Everything is because of this. But I think the only place I disagree with you on, Don, is I don't see them celebrating it. It's just you cannot...
I don't say celebrate, but it does feel like there's like an honor of the man. We lost OJ Simpson
But,
today.
Michael, how do you draw the line? It's not honor to me. It's just huge news.
How did you cover when Charles Manson died?
Charles Manson wasn't one of the great celebrity stories of the century.
But we've admitted
it was
the
just
fact
a murder
that it's getting
story.
the coverage it's getting is because of the murders. If those murders didn't happen, you would cover it like any other former actor or athlete that passed away.
But you can't remove
on the bottom line, you'd mention it.
But you can't remove what happened.
That's why it's getting as much play.
Right. It's Manson, for lack of a better example, was only famous because of the murder part. OJ was beloved when that whole thing happened, so you can't sort of take one piece away.
It's hard to explain, but watching this morning when the news broke, it bothered me.
What are they supposed to do?
Maybe it was just the coverage ABC had. I don't know. That's the coverage that I watch. I don't know. It just felt like it was a little bit much for me.
Here's the New York Times. The New York Times, above the fold, the very top right now, is Democrats hammer a simple attack on abortion. Donald Trump did this. It's just a Trump article about the election, some other stuff. Under that, there's a break. Picture of OJ with the gloves. 2 articles. OJ Simpson, football star whose trial riveted the nation, dies at 76. Next one, OJ, made in America, made by TV. And it's an article in O.J. Simpson's Life and Trials. Television was a spotlight, a microscope, and a mirror, our TV critic writes. And it's about his effects on television. But none of them are saying, all of it's about what he meant to America as a whole, not that we lost a great man.
All right, we'll take a brief time out. Still have to talk about the Ohtani situation. Also, Anthony's showing off with all the WFUV students here because he booked Doc Gooden tomorrow for 4 o'clock.
Oh, look at that.
Well, they just cleared out. He did it.
There's still one kid.
There's only one. By the way, this kid who stayed, he's the hustler of the group.
He's pretty sharp.
He's the one who's going for it. You can see it.
Is there? Can Yes get footage when they do a documentary on him in about 30 years?
What, the last FUV guy?
Yeah. This is how dedicated he was.
He wanted to keep hanging out.
When everybody left, he hung out. This is one of the reasons why he became the next Bob Costas.
I love it. Peter, tell us about BetterHelp.
Okay, so they all walked up to me and said, hey, your boy died. I don't listen, I understand he might have did it, but nobody can't get on the radio and call him a murderer because he got judged by a jury of his peers and he beat it.
Okay.
So I just don't understand. Well, yeah, he beat it.
Yeah, we didn't call him a murderer.
No, not y'all. People that's calling the show, not y'all. Yeah, keeping it real.
But you know what, Brian? There's a lot of people who think that he's a murderer.
Right, but in life, Brian, I mean, people are, I guess, entitled to their opinions, too. He lost the civil suit, so he was held responsible in some way for what happened to them. So,
how old are you, Brian?
46 years old.
So you lived through it. Okay.
No.
Now, I'm asking you to keep it real. You believe he didn't do it?
I I don't know.
Well, why don't you tell Brian?
What
were your? How about just take us? Just curious, because we're three white guys here, and you're a black man. Take us through what were your feelings when the verdict came out back then in the 90s.
Well, as you know, like as we was growing, my parents and them was like, well, good for him. That's what he get from running to marrying a white girl. Some of the community was. Right. I gotta be blunt with y'all. They was.
Right.
They wasn't that good for him because we get tired of people getting money, black people getting money. Then all of a sudden they go marry a white woman. You in America, you can always marry who you want to marry. But why black people keep doing that?
So you're saying so that was one attitude that people had is kind of that's what he gets for that's what he gets for messing with a white woman. But what did you think about when he got off? Were you happy when he got off?
I was happy he got off because they just let the police officer beat Rodney King on camera.
Yep.
I cannot forget about that.
Nope, you can't leave that out of the story. It happened right before.
They beat him. They had a rioting. They beat him almost in an inch of his life, and they all got found now guilty. Because I always got to put that in the story. Because that definitely happened around the time that happened. So when he ran from the cops, nobody blacks was really saying that because we just seen what they did to Rodney King, and they got found not guilty. Come on, y'all.
Right.
And to this day, they still have it. It's like people haven't let it go. The man's dead. Why people that's Caucasian in my country keep coming up to me? Oh, your man died. Well, I remember the rich billionaire white kid who just killed 4 people in the car and got 10 years probation. There's nobody saying nothing about that.
Sure.
Yeah, I think, Brian, and thank you for the call. I think that was such a polarizing moment in America where the chasm between races was accentuated.
Right.
And I think that we have not recovered. And I think, if anything, it's accentuated more and more every day.
Now, what needs to be understood here, and I understand everything that Brian is coming from, and that was something that was a major point 30 years ago, is that the white person that gets off is kind of the same reason that OJ got off. Privilege. Sometimes privilege is the color of your skin. Sometimes privilege is the money you make. He got off because he was rich, and he was able to get like 5 of the best lawyers on the planet to defend him. So sometimes it's color, sometimes it's money, and that's why he was able to get off. And that's the problem with the judicial system. If OJ Simpson had been a bus driver making $20,000 a year, he'd be in prison right now.